With that, we will call to order the regular meeting of council for Monday, March 27th. There is a missing schedule that was in our posted agenda, and that was provided there, as well as a few more agendas printed, and folks will share those, I hope. Looking for approval of our agenda this evening?
So moved. Second.
All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Public participation time. We do have a number of people in the audience, and I'd love to have you all speak, but we only allocate 20 minutes at the start of the meeting for public participation. So I may ask for your indulgence if your point has been made. Maybe we've taken it into we'll have taken it into consideration, so we're not doing repeats. But if there's still folks that would like to have something to say, I will open the public participation part again at the close of our meeting. So trying to give you all opportunity to say what you came to do, say, or otherwise. So with that, I will open public participation. So who wants to be first?
Roy Banner, will be 546 Bezanton Way. I speak in favor of 612.
It picks up if that makes it better. Lift it right out of there.
I speak in favor of 612. As for trying to get the 40% lot coverage, I would have been down to a 1,500 square foot rancher approximately to do that, and it would have been not worth it. I couldn't even live in that with my kids. So I need the extra space for that. I also speak seeing the site and someone that works with houses on land on a regular basis, looking at the 4, 7, and 9 for the variances over the rooftop patios, looking at them and seeing what's there. There's no sight lines impacted on this. It really doesn't impact the sight lines. It is quite clear. This is about getting people of all disabilities, etc., using the land the best way possible. Okay? Thank you very much.
Next speaker.
Good evening. My name is Linda Kirstein, and I live at 3640 Propeller Place in Unit 138. I'm representing myself and my husband here tonight, he cannot be here, and thank you for this opportunity to present our views to City Council. Tonight we would like to bring to your attention some of our concerns about the development called Elevation Point and present some blasting considerations. Historically, during this 2 years of blasting, some people did not receive a written notice. So perhaps in addition to door-to-door delivery of notices, one could also be sent to our management company. Their name is Proline, for posting on our website.
Can we speak into the mic because it's...
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Can't see past it very well. So posting the blasting notice on the management company's website so that everyone gets it. We don't have mailboxes at our doors, and so notices can blow away really easily in the wind. Second of all, audible signals were never very good, and living next to a blasting site is like living next to a war zone. So it'd be nice to know when the blast is about to happen. And the blasters were using little air horns. Sometimes we could hear them, sometimes we couldn't, and lots of times we simply didn't hear it at all. We in Unit 138 live right next to the site, and we've witnessed on at least 2 occasions when the blasting mats did not do their protective job. We saw rocks fly out of the sides of the stack of the mats and go quite a distance. And of course, we remember reading about the bombing of Pondside Terrace, and we don't want a repeat of that. In light of the next blasting being in very close proximity to our home, we want to be sure that measures are in place to mitigate any possible damage. We already have a significant crack across our crawl space floor. Our fireplace tiles are being held in place with duct tape, and our kitchen cabinets are falling away from the wall. The countertop has also dropped, cracking all the caulking between the counter and the wall and allowing water to flow behind if we're not careful to wipe it up. This is all damage that has occurred since the blasting started. It appears as though the entire northwest corner of our unit has settled significantly away from the rest of the building. There is also a growing crack in the ceiling drywall in the living room. We have put off alerting our insurance company until the blasting is done, but there is obviously more to come if another blasting permit is issued. Our concern is that we will be on the hook if we make an insurance claim. We read in the newspaper that residents on the west side of Elevation Point had damage repaired on their own insurance, and the developer and subcontractors paid the deductible. This means that owners will be responsible for paying future increases in their insurance costs as a result of making a claim. We do not think this is fair, considering we are not at fault here. When we bought our unit, our understanding was the developer and his subcontractors had insurance that would cover our damages. We were given contact information for their insurance company, and when we did contact them in May of last year, because we thought the blasting was finished, an adjuster came to assess our situation. She told us that we would not likely see any financial recompense from their insurance company because we could not prove the damage was not due to normal settling. In our opinion, any settling due to natural causes would have occurred in the time between the building completion in 2010 and 2016. Thank you for listening, and we trust that steps will be taken to address our concerns. Would you like a copy?
Good evening. My name's Sandy Austin, and I live at Unit 105 at 3640 Propeller Place, that we affectionately call Pondview. First of all, I want to say that I love living in Colwood, and I love the development I'm in. I think we've got the best of both worlds. We've got the Colwood crawl, but then I'm really not sure why they blame that just on us. However, in the past 2 years that I've lived here, blasting for Phase 1 of Elevation Point's been an ongoing occurrence, and as you've just heard, it's not been without its damages. I've given up trying to straighten pictures, and I don't live next to the blasting site. We in Pondview, I think, have been pretty tolerant and patient, but we've become extremely tired of the activity. I understand that more blasting is planned in Phase 1. I just want to refer to the City of Colwood Bylaw 272 related to blasting. Section 2 talks about the notification that's required. Occupants of buildings or dwellings within 300 meters of the edge of the blast must be notified. That's the minimum requirement. However, how is this notification radius determined, and what factors are taken into account? For example, rock conditions and type and existence of any fault lines. Who determines the radius? Hopefully it's not the developer or the blasting contractor. I recommend that consideration be given by the municipal engineer to increase this distance for the remainder of Phase 1 blasting, given the intensity of some of the historical blasting that's occurred. The bylaw does allow for such an increase in radius. Also, the notice to occupants must be 2 clear business days prior to the commencement of the blasting. This bylaw specifies the notice must include the expected date of the commencement of the blasting, how long it's estimated to go on, methods used to safeguard persons and property, signals and warning methods to inform of a pending blast, and the name and phone number of the representatives of the blasting company and their insurance company. Notices that I've received to date have never included this information, not at this level of detail. We deserve fair warning and detailed information as allowed in the bylaw. Inadequate or infrequent notification can't continue to be allowed. Some of the people in our development never received the notice. Thank you for allowing me this opportunity.
Colleen Brownlee, 132 3640 Propeller Place. I'll sum up probably the blasting area. I am the newbie within the area, concerned about blasting, but always like to take a proactive step as opposed to reactive after blasting. I wasn't there to be able to react. However, looking at your bylaw and indicating that because the proximity of some of us is within the 60-meter limit of where the blasting is going to occur, it is my understanding, certainly also looking at your policy, your bylaw, is that the homes, the dwellings nearby would be inspected by the insurer, the adjuster who is employed by or works with the blasting contractor. So I believe that will happen, but I don't believe it would happen within 48 hours. My understanding of 48 hours is that within 48 hours a blast is going to occur. But prior to that, the inspection would be done. There would be more than suitable notice given to the residents, et cetera, so that everybody, all the T's are crossed and the I's are dotted. And I think that would be appropriate. And I do believe with the experience that has gone on over the past several months that the development has been moving forward, that all of the things that have occurred will take a more positive stance and a positive direction as the development continues. I'd like to say that I have met with John Newton from Homeward Constructors, and he certainly has allayed some of my fears and addressed some of my questions, and for that I do appreciate it. I think that everybody is trying to work in good faith, but it is unfortunate when there was a website up that got everybody excited, and sometimes once you're excited, it's hard to focus on the task at hand. So I think it's important, and Council certainly has heard me talk about blasting it 3 times now, that there are some avenues that need to be pursued. We're moving forward, hopefully, in a more positive view, so that all in all, when the development is complete, it is completed in a positive fashion, and neighbors on both sides will be looking at it in a positive way, and certainly the new homeowners will enjoy the area as much as the rest of us do living in Colwood. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hello. I'm Neil Skinner, 120 3640 Propeller Place, one of the residents at Pondview. I submitted a written submission. You have it. I trust you'll read it, or you have. I'll try to focus on the main points. I speak for 25 of 31 owners of townhomes in Pondview, which we are directly adjacent to Elevation Point, as you know. We appeared at your planning committee on March 7th to object to the latest variances sought by Mr. Newton and Ms. Duncan. They've now asked for and received variances on literally every single lot, all 41 of them, in CD9 and in Phase 1 of CD8. And let me say this also. Lots 28, 29, and 30 in CD8 were not in Phase 1, yet there they are. How did that happen? We asked the 2 variance applications be deferred on the ground that further information was required. The committee rejected that request, but did not give direct reasons for that rejection. That may not seem important to you, but they had a legal duty to do so, and so do you. It is necessary for empowered bodies to give real, relevant, and substantively cogent reasons for rejecting a formal submission, and to fail to do that is contrary to law. Think about it. 10 long years or more have passed since the inception of Elevation Point. We are as anxious as anyone is to see it being completed. We're not anti-development. Even though the final stages of Elevation Point are soon to be before you, there are real issues that deserve your attention. We are trying to bring those issues into your direct view and frame of reference. That's why we're here. On March 7th, we made 3 main points to the committee. I won't repeat them. They're found in paragraph 6 of my written submission. But 3 action items, which I'm about to ask for, stem from those points. The 3 headings are: 1, the impact of multiple variance applications over 5 or more years; 2, blasting as a rationale for amending site coverage on Lot 29; 3, increased site coverage for 10 lots in CD8 and 6 in CD9. We now submit that the following 3 actions be taken by this council, and we're not suggesting that these variances be either denied or deferred. So let's make that clear. 1, formal conditions concerning house design and massing as recommended by your committee on March 7th be applied to every lot. 2, council should direct that further information be assembled and examined prior to any further blasting on CD8, or if there is any more on CD9, and that the product of that investigation form or augment the content of any formal conditions regarding blasting to these variances. 3, and this stems from our written submission to the committee on March 7th, which you also have a copy of, that you consider setting a date on which and a venue in which a set of broader issues which we identified in our submission on March 7th may be examined and considered by you, at which we would have a right of appearance. I also want to say that we fully support the views of your committee, rejecting increased height, and ask that requests for increased building height by either developer be flatly denied in these and all future applications for these 2 parcels. A key underlying issue that we brought up before, and I just want to underscore it, These variance applications nonetheless have what we believe are significant site and urban design implications, including massing, green space, parking, sunlight, and maybe others. Both developers should be required to show and explain how they will deal with these issues, as articulated not by us, but by your planning department on a lot-by-lot basis. I'll just follow up or finish by saying a few things. Why are we engaged? My neighbor Colleen referred to it. Look at paragraphs 7 and 8 in my submission. The website that came out in January about phase 2 enraged us. We saw the whole hill being taken down. I mean, why don't they build a 70-story building? Okay, when's it going to end? That's why we're engaged, okay? That offending page is still on the internet if you know the specific URL. It has not been removed. It casts a wide net worldwide looking for money. Let's face facts, people. The issue's alive, and we ask you, please, do not avoid it or pretend it's not there. In other words, phase 2, not tonight, for the coming months and years. What do we want to do? What do we want to accomplish by being engaged? I mean, we're here, we're engaged in these variances. This is like the dress rehearsal, right? We want to be engaged in the long term for these developments and maybe others. Maybe, the development near the golf course. We want to convince you, maybe we don't have to become more interested and concerned with what's happening with these developments and others up and along Latoria Road. The other point that I want to make is these two developers think they're exempt from the official community plan. And superficially, when we made some arguments about the 08 plan, because we were uninformed, they seemed glib about the fact that they were exempt from it. They are not exempt from provisions of the 97 OCP, notwithstanding that it was repealed. Don't let them forget that. I'm not sure how relevant that is, but there may be provisions that do affect this. And notwithstanding its repeal, it affects these developers. If you don't believe me, seek outside legal advice. Back in 07, not you, a previous council, sort of, if I can use an expression, it's not your fault, gave away the farm on all these lots. All these CDs, these comprehensive development areas were created back in July 2007 very quickly and turned a bunch of sensitive hillside zones into urban development. In these two lots, an increase in density of over 1,100%. That's in the past. What's happening now? We want to look to the final future development of these two lots in particular to make sure you're just careful. Don't, these developers don't have carte blanche to do whatever they want. Do your job. But that does not mean I'm saying that you need to be careful and appropriately vigilant. And we want to help, and if we can, we will. That's why I want to have some future engagement at your convenience. Thank you.
Thank you. With that, folks, we are at the 7:20 mark, and I will have to move forward in our agenda. Is there a show of hands of people who are wanting to speak at the end of the meeting? Because if there's... Is there... Pardon? No, if there's just two, then I might just do a quick extension at this point if it's short, but if we had a dozen hands in the air. Council, are you okay with that? Conclude with these? Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship, members of council. My name's Will Parable. I'm with Victoria Design. I've been involved in the design of the project and working with the applicants on their application with the variances. I just want to make it clear that when we asking for some of these variances, number one is the one major thing was when we were asking for the increased site coverage. What we are trying to do is lower the scale of the building, especially from the aspect of Latoria Street, looking up on the hill, to keep those buildings just as a two-story building from the low side and a one-story from the high side. And that just basically is like squishing it down instead of building a three-story house and then having all that massing sort of attacking Latoria. So that was our main reason, and we picked a number of lots that we felt that this worked very well for. The other aspect in the height is those are generally houses that have been blasted down. They're back up and into a hillside. and we're asking for is just for the penthouse or the roof deck area. That'll be also in our design, and we sent a little diagram to staff. Will be set back on the building, so it really won't be seen from the street. And it's so we're trying to do things that are sort of to help make the subdivision better. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Marchand, you?
Rick Marchand, 3508 Aloha Avenue. My comments pale in comparison to what you've heard tonight, but it's a matter of process here. This is the fourth or fifth council meeting I've come to in a row now where I'm seeing bylaws with the first, second, and third reading all combined in one sitting. You're following the letter of the law, but in terms of the spirit, we have 2 items on the bylaw list tonight. I have no problem with them, but in terms of past meetings, there have been a number of bylaws where first, second, and third have been carried out without the opportunity for citizens to make comment at any part of that process. I don't see a crisis evolving in terms of bylaw development here that would allow for a first and second reading, a bit of a pause for citizens to basically digest the content and then to come back with verbal representation prior to your third reading. Again, like I said, tonight I have no problem with what's in the agenda. All of the sewer plans I think are pretty straightforward. I personally have no problem with them. But I know in previous meetings when I've seen first, second, and third reading of some bylaws, I did have an issue, but it was only because I came to these meetings and read the content that I couldn't get a chance to speak about them, because once the council is underway, we can only observe. So I'd like you to take that into consideration as well. Thank you.
Thank you. And with that, we will move on with our agenda. Thank you, folks, for being patient through that. Mayor's message. Just a few things for those of you that caught the news this evening. I was in attendance to a signing of an MOU with our Songhees First Nations folks in and around working together on what might come of Royal Roads lands in the future. That was witnessed by council members of both Songhees and our own council here and staff, and it's the beginning. It's the start of having those conversations and being party to the planning of the future. So stay tuned. It's, like I said, just the beginning. The other one is that Fort Rod Hill is doing a salute to Vimy Ridge on Saturday, April the 8th from 6 p.m. until 9 p.m. There is a free admission in honor of our Canada 150, of course, and there are activities for the whole family, special ceremony, and a 100-run rapid fire barrage. I think it might have been 100 gun. Not quite sure. In any way,
Go to find out.
I know. Yeah, you have to go to find out. Is there anything else from members of council? Nothing on the agenda. I did want to make note that we do have our new Director of Engineering and Public Works, Nikki Hoagland, with us at the table. So she has also heard your comments this evening, and I'm sure we'll be having further conversations. So, and we also have Brent Molnar, who is not with us at... Oh, there he is. Brent, oh, you're out there in the audience. Brent, thank you. There you go. So welcome. Also hearing what is going on in your neighborhood of interest. With that, looking for adoption of the minutes, please, for the regular meeting of council, March the 13th, and the special committee of whole, March the 20th. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Looking for receipt of 3 sets of minutes, Colwood Cycling Advisory, September 8th, special committee of the whole, March 1st, special committee of the whole on March 2nd.
Move receipt, your worship. Second.
All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. First item of correspondence on our agenda is a letter from Laura Davis, who is the president of the West Shore Arts Council, requesting support of our council, as we have done in the past, as they seek a community gaming grant application. Councillor Day.
I'd like to move that we write a letter of support for their gaming grant.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Second item is a email correspondence from Kathy Peters, who is a speaker and advocate for youth and child exploitation. Councillor Day, do you have an intro on that one?
Sure, I'd be happy to speak to this. I chair the Victoria Family Court and Youth Justice Committee, of which the Capital Region Action Team for Sexually Exploited Youth is a part. And Kathy Peters has been working with CRAT to increase the awareness of the impact of both youth and child exploitation and youth porn addiction. For the past 4 years, she's speaking out about the difficulties in preparing our communities to be aware, and she's been working with the RCMP Serious Crimes Unit headquartered in Surrey, BC, and her goal is to traffic-proof every community in BC, and she has forwarded to us a copy of Red Light, Green Light, which is a very informative documentary about sexual exploitation and whether or not legalizing prostitution is beneficial to human trafficking in it, or helps in any way to make people safer. And the consensus in the documentary examining both cases in Norway and Europe is that it does not, and that Victoria, although we are a small, large town, we are becoming well known for pornography, and especially child pornography. So she is recommending positive, healthy role models and mentorship. The Boys Club Network and the Moose Hide campaign are two examples of that type of initiative. She's asking us to carefully consider who we give business licenses to, that massage and escort services and adult entertainment centers, tattoo parlors, even day spas and modeling agencies are all areas that bear careful watching. And the use of pornography is definitely fueling human sex trafficking, and child pornography, of course, is growing. I heard a presentation by the Victoria Police Agency, it has to be 10 years ago, talking about the difficulty that they have removing images from the internet, and those are things that victims live with for the rest of their lives. Also, fortunately, we also supported motion M47 that was put forward in the Federal House by MP Arnold Viersen to investigate the public health effects of violent sexual material on our youth, and that was passed unanimously. And we are encouraging cyber safety programs. There are several agencies that provide that. Children of the Street Society, operating out of Burnaby, is brought over every year through the Family Court and Youth Justice Committee and CRAT, providing free interactive workshops to youth in our schools. And it's pretty much putting a sign out there in the water saying there are sharks, so be careful how you swim. And she's asking that we pass on this information to our law enforcement teams, our frontline service providers, to our educators and our health authorities. So that is what we're trying to do. We're raising awareness. And there will be a report out coming back to the Protective Services Committee from our RCMP locally to hear what they are doing about these issues. And this is really just to start that very difficult conversation in our community.
And just further to that, we are looking to have a showing of this for anybody's interest, maybe through the Teach-A-Mista Theatre at Royal Bay School. So that's a work in progress, and we'll be posting on our website and reaching out for people that might want to come and just have a look on that in the future. So this is a receipt.
Yes, motion to receive her correspondence and to send a letter of thanks.
All those, any conversation? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Moving forward then into planning and land use. We are, yes. Planning and land use. 6.1.1, recommendation development variance permit application number DVP 17003, 517 and 535 Latoria Road. Councillor Logan.
Thank you, Worship. With this application, the applicant is requesting to vary section 10.13.4 of the land use bylaw, increasing the lot coverage from 35 to 40% for lots 1 to 4, as well as 19, 23, 24, 26, 27, and 29. The increase in lot coverage of lots 1 to 4 is to accommodate a master bedroom on the main floor of the rancher-style house. That the increase in lot coverage of lots 19, 23, 24, 26, and 27 is primarily to accommodate a more functional floor plan and to increase the amount of floor area on the upper level of the house to reduce the requirement for additional blasting. It was kind of an interesting start to the meeting, Worship, in that, as it was alluded to by, I believe, Mr. Skinner, we actually started out with a bit of an apology at the beginning of the meeting because there was some material that and advertising that indicated some significant density on the top part of the site that had not been approved, nor an application received by the city, which justifiably got the residents in the neighborhood excited. And so they were quite passionate when we had the discussion at committee. The applicant did admit that initially on they did make a mistake during the previous variance process by forgetting to request a 40% site coverage in order to accommodate the city's request to have a single level structure for certain lots viewable from the street. It was added that it wasn't until they were informed by the builders that the error it was created that less than it was added that it wasn't until they were informed by the builders that the error that there was an error was created less than preferable building site for the type of house design the city prefers to have built. So the committee did take into account and took in all the comments that the neighborhood did provide, and we were sympathetic certainly to the amount of variances and the concern that the neighborhood had regarding the amount of variances that were put forward. The recommendation that came out from committee was made to with an effort to minimize the impact on the neighborhood. Not to further stoke the fires, so to speak, by approving yet another variance, but simply the approval was meant as a way to soften the impact that the neighborhood has already been receiving. I understand that there was a recommendation that came from committee, but I understand that there are a few changes that will have the same end result, so I will defer to the Director of Planning.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Those that are at the committee meeting may recall some discussion around the conditions and the procedural issues that staff saw. So since, well, maybe I'll just go over those conditions. As stated in tonight's agenda package, the Planning and Land Use Committee recommended that the development variance permit application number 17003, proposing lot coverage relaxation from 35 to 40%, be approved, subject to the following condition: that the form and character of the affected lots, the dwellings built on the affected lots, shall be designed to minimize the impact of the building height and massing to the satisfaction of the City of Colwood prior to the issuance of a building permit. Since this recommendation was made, staff have identified a procedural issue in that the City Council cannot legally subdelegate approval of the aforementioned building plans to staff. Staff therefore submit that an alternative approach is available through a revised condition requiring that the massing shown in the building permit plans be in accordance with the plans presented as in Appendix 3 of the staff report that was presented to the Planning Land Use Committee meeting on March 7th, and the illustrations presented at tonight's council meeting, which are shown here on the screen and also provided to council as the package before you, dated March 27th, 2017. So essentially, staff is proposing that requirement of building permit plans, that they be checked prior to building permit occupants for minimizing massing and height, that procedurally problematic condition be replaced with a condition tying the variance approval to the plans before you tonight.
Your Worship, I believe, yes, I believe that substantially addresses the committee's concerns and comments from the meeting a couple weeks ago, and therefore I will be prepared to move the recommendation.
With those changes.
With those changes, as the director has presented.
Is there a seconder?
Second.
Discussion. Councillor Knoll?
Yes, with the conditions staff proposed, I will be supporting this, but I do really agree with some of the members of the audience speaking to this project. We have a 30-lot subdivision. The staff report was very thorough and covered all of the variances that have been applied. There's over 52 variances if we approve these tonight. To me, that is incredibly poor planning. I would suggest what the city should do is put a sliding scale on variance applications. So your first one is X dollars, your second one is 2X, the next one is 4X. It would give the city a lot more money, and it would make the developer do his work through actual planning rather than variances. So I would like to ask staff to prepare a report on how we could go about doing this, whether we can do it legally, and bring it to a future council meeting.
That's a motion, folks. We need a seconder.
We've got a motion on the floor already.
Yeah, we already have a motion. We have to do that one first.
Staff direction? We take staff direction on that one? Seeing as how it's a report?
Your Worship, would you like me to comment on my thoughts about the, I could comment directly to that motion.
Mm-hmm.
The city is required to have its fees for applications commensurate with the cost of processing the application. So I don't think a sliding scale based on the number of applications made to date would be legally viable in terms of us tying that fee to the services provided, which I don't see them necessarily going up because of the number of variances. Certainly it becomes more complex in terms of the background that staff has to undertake, but I don't see that impacting the fees that we could collect that meaningfully.
Anything further from council? Councillor Day?
Sorry, we're straying a little bit off topic, but not terribly far, so I'll just remind you the reason I'm speaking to this at this time is because there's a motion on the floor to support variances that are up to 52 variances in history. So the discussion about how we charge for variances is, I think, very relevant to trying to use it as a disincentive to have so many variances. And I think the point about tying the cost of the variance application to the cost of the application is a good one, and that's the preface that I would want to follow. But currently, if you want to get a variance for a garden shed that you're putting up in your backyard, it's costing you the same as some developments that are coming forward with 30 or 100 lots. It's the same $1,500 fee. So I think that we really do need to look at our fees and how we're recovering the cost of our staff effort.
Is that not in the works on fee review?
Your Worship, the city increased the fees for development variance permits, I think, was it 2 years? 2 years ago. There's also a standing council resolution that staff automatically review those fees, and I think it was 5 years? Every 5 years, so we're about 3 years out from the next review.
Councillor Day?
If I may, what I see as the flaw in what we've done so far is that the way we're charging for those variances is on a per variance rather than on a per lot basis. So when, Joe Smith comes in that he wants to put up a garden shed, a little closer to his lot line than we would normally allow, and he gets his affected neighbors to send us in letters of support, he's paying the same amount as somebody who's in for multiple houses.
Thank you. And staff?
Your Worship, can I suggest to Council that we proceed with the motion that's on the floor and have a subsequent motion that's similar to Councillor Nault's to talk about the fees and structure and get a direction to staff to actually come back with a report rather than mix the two together with.
So we have Councillor Nault thinking about that. So we're going to go back to the original motion that Councillor Logan had put up. Any further conversation around that? Oh, Councillor Day?
Sorry, I just want to reiterate, as I stated at the Planning and Land Use Committee meeting, that the particular motion, this makes me more comfortable. I was not, as I read this, I'm going, well, I know our staff are very good, but this is putting an awful lot on staff to make it right, if you will, after the fact. So I'm glad it's actually tied to what's been presented at the committee. And I think probably the variances do provide the best outcome for the people who've come to that Planning and Land Use Committee with their concerns and their worries. So I kind of feel torn in that I don't like the possibility that this is going to open the door, and the reason I'm speaking out is to try to discourage that from happening. I do not want to see every hillside shoreline application that comes in point to this development and say, well, you gave it to them, so you should give it to us too. So I am only prepared to support this in the best interests of the neighborhood, and I do not support it being applied to other developments in the future.
Any further? Councillor Martin?
Thank you. I am supportive of the motion, and I guess I'm saying this more for the audience than to the rest of the council. There were some things brought up during public participation around blasting and everything else, and that's a completely separate subject. It's not what we're dealing with this evening in this variance, and hence the reason we're not addressing it. It's not as though we're not listening or we're avoiding the discussion. It's just that what's before us, and I'm very supportive of what we're voting on.
With that, call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Next one on the list, 6.1.2, again for development variance permit application DVP 17004 for 543 Latoria.
Thank you, Worship. This application is similar in nature as the last application in that the applicant is requesting to vary section 10.14.4 of the land use bylaw to increase the lot coverage for lots 1 and 6 from 35 to 40%. And then secondly, to relax the maximum building height from 8.5 meters to 12.5 meters for lots 7, 9, and 10. The rationale for the lot coverage increase is the same as the last application. Committee, although thought that the increase, thought that the provision of rooftop gardens and cabanas were kind of a funky idea. However, given the sensitivities to height, we weren't prepared to make a recommendation to approve the height increase. Had that been something that was provided to the city or applied for at the front end of the development, then the committee may have looked at it a little more favorably. However, we are well into the process here, and certainly the neighborhood has been quite vocal in their in our discussion regarding height. Now, I will, rather than moving the recommendation, I will defer again to the Director of Planning.
Your Worship, there was a similar condition attached to the recommendation associated with lot coverage increase from 35 to 40% for this variance as well. So we have the same procedural issues in terms of the subdelegation not being a viable way to control for massing and height. So I'd like to propose in a similar vein that the condition proposed by the committee be replaced with two separate conditions. Firstly, that the variance for lot coverage be subject to that the dwelling proposed for lot 6 be a maximum of 2 stories in height as viewed from the street frontage. And secondly, that the building permit plans for lot 1 be in accordance with the plans presented at the Planning Land Use Committee as Appendix 3 to the staff report dated March 27th, 2017. So once again, it's a way to control massing without there being that subdelegation problem. And I just note that the plans shown in that appendice in the staff report showed a one-story dwelling from the road.
Councillor Logan.
I'll move the recommendation as presented by the Director of Planning, Your Worship.
Seconder? Second. Discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Going back to Councillor Nault in regards to a recommendation. Do you have something?
Yes, I'd like to see a report. I don't think maybe necessarily a sliding scale if staff tells us it has to be related to the actual cost of doing it, but maybe a policy that says we don't want variances, period. To me, a variance is somebody that has done a poor design job. And, you know, my first year on council, we had a brand new development come to us and we approved it. And not a week later, it was back with 13 variances. Again, that is bad planning. So I think we have to find a mechanism to force the planners, the developers to do a proper job before it gets to council, because this is not good use of staff time, it's not good use of council time, and it's not good use of the neighbors' time. So I would like to see a report suggesting mechanisms whereby we can address the number of variances coming before a committee, and be that sliding scale, or be that time delays, or be that just a flat no to more than one variance application per property.
Discussion on that? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. We will move forward then in our agenda as listed into Finance and Administration. There is one item in there for us to deal with, and I can take this one as I've been party to what's been going on. Councillor Day and I have both been in group meetings Just a bit of an off, how many folks in this audience don't have a GP? What?
I guess you don't have
You
any
don't?
problems.
Yeah. Anyways, this is coming about as a result. Even it's a South Vancouver Island doctors who have a team based in the community who are seeking to find a way, because they're finding their practices are eroding, that they are having difficulty finding replacement physicians to take over practices. The result, of course, is for many of us, and I've been through 2 doctors in the most recent 18 months on retirement and then subsequent emergency retirement. And it's happening all over the place throughout the province. So this is the first steps with a resolution before council to move towards our AVICC meeting that's coming up next week as a resolution to have the province take the necessary steps to assist communities in BC overall to regain their status with doctors, with looking after health, and providing health security for folks. So the resolution is before us. If I need somebody to move it and second it, and then we can do the questions.
I would move the resolution.
Any discussion, questions, or whatever on that? Councillor Day?
Just to inform council and the audience that I have as many as 3 studies that have been done in the West Shore about wait times. For youth mental health, the wait time is about 12 months. And for a GP, it can be 5 years to find a GP that's anywhere close to being in the West Shore. And just like to mention that the reason this is coming forward at this late hour prior to AVICC, normally we would send things a little earlier, but really we didn't have all that information together in one place with advocacy from the doctors until just recently. So I think it's an issue that is emerging as being even those areas who have rural designation, and with rural designation comes extra pay for the doctors who are willing to locate there. Even those rural locations are finding that their doctors, they come, they take their pay for their 3 years, they get the extra money, they get to ski in Fernie or wherever they've gone to, and then they're out of here. They're off to Alberta where they pay a lot more, or they're off to somewhere else. So even where you're able to recruit doctors, the retention of those doctors is not working in BC.
With that, call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. And with that, I would like a further recommendation to have this distributed to our member communities in advance of AVICC so that we can give them a bit of a heads up. Please?
So moved.
All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Moving then into bylaws number 1665, third reading only.
Move third reading, Your Worship.
All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Bylaw number 1666, third reading only.
Move third reading.
Second.
All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. 7.3 bylaw number 1628, final reading for Colwood Main Sewer Local Area Service Bylaw and Establishment. Bylaw number 598. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. For Colwood Main Sewer, bylaw number 1669, first, second, and third readings.
Second.
All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried.
Move second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Bylaw number 1670, again, first, second, and third for Colwood West Sewer Local Area Service Establishment.
Second.
All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried.
Move second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried.
Move third.
All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, folks.
Move in camera.
Second.
All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Again, folks, thank you very